Decision on whether to supply Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine or sell them to NATO and let them sell them to Ukraine?
Yeah, I've sort of made a decision, pretty much.
Sure,
You know,
yes,
if you consider, yeah, I think I want to find out what they're doing with them.
Yes.
You know, where are they sending them? I guess I'd have to ask that question. That war should never have started.
Well, hello, that's me again. Today is October 7th, 2025. It is Tuesday, I believe. And let's start with a little bit of update. And what you saw in the beginning is essentially what is happening in terms of what was happening for the last months. Russia is just absolutely pummeling the remnants of the military, industrial complex and power plant of Ukraine. And as the result, especially Kharkov gets it. And this is all connected to the fact of Russians constantly just basically advancing. And if you take a look at the latest data, which will start today with the latest data from the special military operation, you can see yourself in terms of losses, it dropped somewhat, 1,355 killed. These are primarily killed. And as you can see yourself, Ukraine is trying desperately with all kinds of the terrorist attacks and the drones and what have you. 416 drones have been shut down, and it just merely confirms the effectiveness of Russian air defense. 4 MLRS have been wiped out on the line of the contact. And in terms of what they continue to do, like attacking the Voronezh nuclear power station, yeah, it wasn't a big drone, but it still kind of got through. And as I already stated, I mean, you will have a leaker or two when you look attentively at the number of things they launch. And yeah, this is what they are doing. They are attacking nuclear power stations. This is what Ukraine is good at, terrorism. And I'm not gonna go to there is a powerful documentary produced by the Russian Investigative Committee on atrocities which has been committed by Ukrainian and NATO forces inside the Kursk Oblast, especially the Novaya Opereshnya and places like this, and Ruskaya Opereshnya, pardon me, and Sudzha and things of this nature. Absolute shock in terms of what was happening, in terms of raping women, killing them, people executed, mass executions, and like Ruskaya Opereshnya, children. And so that's what they are good at, terror. And there is an explanation there by the specialists of Russian Investigative Committee, which is sort of mixed between, it's Justice Ministry and FBI wrapped into one. Also, you know, FBI also is basically part of the Justice Department. And so, but it's a powerful video. I suggest you to go in. And today, for some reason, Russian internet is kind of slow. It still works, but it is extremely kind of, you know, scratchy, if you wish. But yes, you can go and look it up at, for example, the Telegram channel of a Russian Investigative Committee and all over the place. It's a powerful video which explains to you what are Russians dealing with. And so, in this case, attack on the Voronezh nuclear power station. It hit one of the cooling towers, didn't damage anything, just basically left a spot on that. And people have to understand that nuclear power stations in Russia are designed such a way that they can take, they can take a lot. You have to have a really serious weapon systems and very complex salvo to even damage them. But that tells you everything you need to know about them. And here is the thing. And here we're going to be talking about, as you see yourself, in the headline or title of this video, Managing the Defeat. And we'll start with this. SVR, Foreign Intelligence Service of Russia, goes out yesterday and tells that UK is furious over failed Russia's strategy. This is SVR saying, and that Britain has neither defeated nor isolated the country and is planning now a new provocation, Moscow intelligence services has said. Britain is furious over its failure. Well, the reason they are furious because they are failure. There is no serious military or intelligence education anymore in United Kingdom, and as the result, whenever the word strategy is used, they are incapable of developing strategy in United States. But Britain is militarily and economically is a chihuahua, and so they are furious because they still live in the 19th century in the empire in which the sun never sets, and so they were now, accounting for their failure to bring about the strategic defeat of Russia and is preparing a new provocation in response to battlefield gains in Ukraine conflict. Moscow Foreign Intelligence Service, SVR, has warned. In a statement on Monday, SVR claimed that UK secret services have resorted to preparing a group of Russian nationals who fight for Ukraine to sabotage a Ukrainian Navy ship or a foreign civilian vessel in European port, after which London would accuse Moscow of orchestrating the attack. Yeah, this is pretty much the level of the London's strategic thinking and planning, what have you, if you can call it. It is, as I already stated, the militarily they are incompetent. They are basically amateurs. The military education in United Kingdom doesn't exist as a craft. Obviously, Sandhurst is a vocational school for retards. It's not a real military academy. And so, yeah, MI6, what do? Terrorism, false flags, killing people, children, women, setting things up of this nature. This is the extent of the capabilities of the United Kingdom, and even that they probably don't do that well. And that's what people constantly accuse me of, like, yeah, you know what, you don't like British. No, I like actually English people. I obviously disagree with their government, but can they do anything about their government, which is essentially suicidal, homicidal, obviously, but suicidal? I don't know, you know what. So, but what do I know? I am nobody here. So, and this is just one of the facets of this whole situation. Now we have Mr. Trump. Oh my God. Mr. Trump, they are kindergarten there. Keep in mind, they are kindergarten in Washington, D.C., and I discussed that those who listened to me and Colonel Daniel Davis and me talking yesterday to each other, you probably heard many things I stated about Ukrainian, American military, and that, yeah, the people on the operational level, those colonels and brigadier generals who deal with the ISR, intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, and they have a background in it, they know what happened. They know how it is developing. It is just the fact that essentially American political class is utterly degenerate. We already know this, and so they cannot accept the reality, and we will be talking about it today. But let's go and take a look also at what do we have with the whole developing situation on the front lines. As you can see yourself, to our good friends Marat Khairunin and Colonel Popov, here we are. As you can see yourself, it's Kharkov. Russians are carving out their security zone there. And if you take a look attentively at the scale of things, it's yesterday's situation. That means what? It probably 3-4 days lag behind it is, before it is reflected accurately. It's yesterday. As you can see yourself, the scale is about 4 kilometers in this segment. And you can see yourself a serious advances there, and they will continue. They will continue in the Kharkov, the same as in every other places along the line of the combat contact. And what can I say? I mean, there is nothing more to say really about it, except for the fact that for people who continue to speculate on the matter of tomahawks, again, I repeat again, and I will be repeating it now in regards to this tomahawk thing, as you could hear in the beginning from Mr. Trump, who again, kindergarten. They can pretend that they somehow, control the situation. In reality, there is no any control of the situation, and nothing the United States can do about all that. And even if to imagine that somehow they find a way to supply tomahawks, as Mr. Trump thinks that they have to be used properly. What is the use of proper tomahawks? Well, yeah, launching at targets, but keep in mind again, TLAM. Tomahawk land attack missile. It can be launched only through few platforms, which obviously the United States will never give up. And obviously there are the only land launchers such as Typhoon, which do exist, they exist in 2 or maybe 3 units. And the production is not very fast, as I already stated. So the only way United States can launch the Tomahawks short of the all-out war, which will turn nuclear immediately because the US Navy, which will attempt to launch them, will be sunk, is the fact that unless the United States moves its assets, such as the higher class strategic missile submarine, which was converted to the carrier of those Tomahawks, is to giving those Typhoons to Ukraine. Will they give it to them? First, there is not enough of them, and secondly, you understand, and Russians continue to reiterate that, yeah, it's going to be very bad for the United States because it puts the United States directly in the conflict with Russia, and then for Europe, all bets are off. And it's all about range. As I repeated constantly, what used to be nuclear version of the Tomahawk had the range of 2,500 kilometers. Average Block 5 has the range of about 1,600 kilometers. It's much shorter than 3M14 caliber. And, so you can launch it only from the launch lines somewhere in the Barents Sea, if you wish, maybe from the Mediterranean. In Ukraine, again, it's difficult to explain to people that no matter what you say, no matter how you say it, you have to have the capability. It's not about, I can say that I identify as, I don't know, Superman. Does it make me a Superman? No. So, the Russians basically told and drew the red line on this issue. And if, however, Mr. Trump tries to bluff his way in, considering the fact that some people say that he is under the influence of Mr. Kellogg. Mr. Kellogg is technically incompetent person. He is American general. That means he doesn't understand war. He has no clue about anything. He doesn't understand how the modern missile basically combat is done, how those strike complexes operate. He doesn't. He's 80 some years old and he is only involved into be profiting from this war. So he's a typical American general. So goes for all other generals like Hodges, Keane, what have you. Those are incompetent people. They never won anything in their life, and so they are losers, basically, both professionally and evidently as humans. And so whenever we talk about these things, whenever we hear, for example, like Cy Hirsch, who, by the way, he has no clue about modern warfare, he is a journer. He is the guy who basically straddles those, deep recesses of the political kitchen in Washington, D.C., having, all his sources who give him information, much of it he may not even know. They know who sleeps with whom, who has rumors about who, things of this nature. Cy Hirsch is not specialist in military or any other things of this nature. But evidently, even he begins to say, as our friend Larry Johnson reports also, that and there are other people who are saying this, that there are concerns about Trump's mental state. Well, there are, I know, and there were always concerns about mental state of Mr. Trump, and evidently it's in accordance to Cy Hirsch's sources. But what is going on then when you look attentively? How can you break this vicious circle of those people who are utter jackasses, who basically humiliate themselves? They talk about war, have no capability to conduct that war, including United States Army, including United States Armed Forces. The only thing United States Armed Forces can do is launch something at somebody who cannot shoot back. And that's about it. This is the capability. So what is going on? How you break this? What is the essence of this? And here we come to the issue which Emmanuel Todd, who wrote a couple years ago, The Defeat of the West, and he wrote the new foreword to his publication in Slovenia and his book. And let's start with this thing. I want to point out how important it is that we have Emmanuel Todd speak about it, because before I go to Emmanuel Todd, let me show you something. Remember this? This was written by me in 2020. In 2021, it saw the light of the day. In 2021, it created some splash, including some leading political magazines such as the American Affairs. Let me quote something from you. You probably remember, I speak about it non-stop, and if you go to the 2015 January of my blog, which is more than 10 years ago, I wrote already then that by doing what at that time, supporting the coup, basically fomenting trouble in Ukraine, United States lost. And everybody would look at me then and go, what the hell are you talking about? United States, a superpower, all these things. I wrote and spoke about on very many occasions that the United States doesn't know what it got itself into. And this is not Vietnam. This is not Afghanistan. These are different people. They do not understand what Russians are and what Russia is, which, by the way, the president of this country celebrates his 73rd birthday today, Mr. Putin. And then, obviously, over the years, as the conflict between NATO, essentially combined West and Russia, progressed, you saw yourself how the rhetoric was changing. And just in my book, one of the things I explain constantly, who are conducting the strategy, including those amateurs from RUSI, Royal United Service Institute, all kinds of MI6, all kinds of the CIA guys who have no clue what they're dealing with. And so here is what I wrote. And this is already was 2020, before the start of the special military operation. And I talk about the Mr. Brzezinski, who shaped very much the perception of Russia in the United States. And he was the, as you remember, national security advisor to Mr. Carter. And then, of course, he was the main foreign policy advisor to Mr. Obama. Brzezinski didn't outwit anybody, as I wrote them, but himself and the followers of his radically Russophobic views, because the Ukraine affair resulted in consequences reflecting a tectonic, albeit unacknowledged, geopolitical defeat for the West. That's 2020, guys, okay? And yes, it wasn't unacknowledged at that time. It also released Russia from the debilitating burden of providing economic welfare for Ukraine, allowing Russia to redirect the released resources for its own development, thus ensuring Russia's return as a pivotal Eurasian and global power. But then again, Mr. Brzezinski was the guy who shaped actually all those so-called strategy, together with the nut jobs from all those so-called conservative think tanks and neocons, obviously, who hate Russian gods. He wasn't a very bright man, and especially whenever, as I already stated, strategic forecasting, strategic intelligence, they do not exist in the United States as a craft. There are those few people who know what it is and do not sit here and quote all those one-liners from whatever, Sun Tzu, from Clausewitz, from some, hair-brained, the economic PhD thesis. They are not nowhere near in the levels of influence or power. And so as the result, we have people who were BS'd by Brzezinski and who believed into all those, obsolete stereotypes, to put it mildly. In reality, it's crap, basically. And as the result, the United States fails all around the world. And I was writing about the defeat of the combined West, as I already stated, second decade. And so Emmanuel Todd, going back to Emmanuel Todd, he writes his forward to his Slovenian publication or issue or edition of the book, and it was written yesterday actually. The dislocation of the West, what threatens us, and it's you can go and look at his Substack, I believe, where he writes this. But Emmanuel Todd is one of those few sane, basically voices which are required to be listened to, and so he writes this. Look at this. Less than 2 years after the French publication of the La Défaite d'Occident, The Defeat of the West, in January 2024, the book's main predictions have come true. Well, I was predicting that since actually, I would say earlier than even the 2014, but yes, Russia has weathered the storm militarily and economically. The American military industry is exhausted. Well, yes, it is. European economies and societies are on the verge of implosion. The Ukrainian army has not yet collapsed, but the stage of the West disintegration has already been reached. And this is the whole point. Russians, as I already stated, they are not in rush because the actually conflict is between Russia and combined West. All of it. All those Western European countries, I mean, England, United Kingdom, Germany, France, they are existential enemy of Russia and Russian people. And so, and he says that I have always been hostile to the Russophobic policies of the United States and Europe. But as a Westerner committed to liberal democracy, a Frenchman trained in research in England, the child of a mother who was a refugee in the United States during the Second World War, I am devastated by the consequences for us Westerners of the war waged without intelligence against Russia. Of course, they do not know what intelligence is, and as I already stated, there are no strategists in any corridors or lobbies, if you wish, of the or corridors of power in Washington, D.C. None. Those people who are real strategists, they're not allowed anywhere near those echo chambers of morons, because most of those political elites in the combined West are morons. And you heard yourself, Mr. Trump, in the beginning, what he says. It's just psychobabble, basically, of the man who doesn't even know what to do. And he writes about it. We are only at the beginning of the catastrophe. A tipping point is approaching, beyond which the ultimate consequences of defeat will unfold. Well, yeah, I call it, as you probably remember, the arrangement phase. This is how it's going to be managed by Russia. And so Emmanuel Todd comes to this very important conclusion. And this is critical to understand what Russia and Russian president in this particular case are doing. They are managing the defeat, which is the fait accompli. The West has lost. It's just that now it came to a head and it could be declared without absolutely no doubt. The irony of history is that the Russians, a European and white people who speak a Slavic language, have become the military shield of the rest of the world because the West refused to integrate them after the fall of communism. Do not forget, for example, for some people like Mr. Clapper or Anatol Livin or all kinds of those so-called pseudo-intellectuals and pseudo-strategists in Washington, D.C., let alone in Europe, I am white, Russian ethnically, white, you can see yourself, I'm a white man, I am a subhuman. And that has to be understood completely. Majority, again, I repeat it again, those who don't like it, I'm sorry, it's your problem. Majority of Europeans, how large the majority, I don't know. Maybe 55, maybe 65, maybe 80%. But for the majority of Western Europeans, for example, I am subhuman. They view Russians as the basically one-cell organisms. They don't like them. They don't want to have Russians around. Period. It's the fact of the cold hard fact. And so, and he talks about Slovenians, and he writes, Emmanuel Todd, I can sketch out here a model of the dislocation of the West. As I already stated, I already sketched this model in 2020 when I spoke about the disintegration of the United States and the combined West. And despite the inconsistencies of the policies of Donald Trump, the defeated American president, he is defeated. We know this. These inconsistencies do not result, I believe, from an unstable and undoubtedly perverse personality. No, they also are. It's just the part of the picture. So this is what we can see, that the man is mentally is incapable to run. Forget about, he will not be able to run Andorra, which is, I don't know how many, 20 kilometers in 20 square kilometers in size. Andorrans, I forgot, fine people of Andorra, if I misrepresent the scale of your country. But he contributes to this disaster, which is constant humiliation, and everything's falling apart in the combined West. And he says that, on the other hand, their leaders, both in the Pentagon and the White House, know that the war is lost. Do they know this in Pentagon or on the operational level? Absolutely. There are obviously those shysters, people without honor, without human integrity, and utterly unprofessional, such as the American generals, who especially parade themselves on the in mass media as imbeciles, or maybe they are imbeciles, and those people in Pentagon know it. They are those generals. They don't. They are shysters, and so they know this in Pentagon and White House, know that the war is lost and that Ukraine will have to be abandoned. Common sense, therefore, leads them to want to get out of the war. But on the other hand, the same common sense makes them realize that the withdrawal from Ukraine will have dramatic consequences for the empire that those from Vietnam, Iraq, or Afghanistan did not have. Correct. Here's the critical. This is indeed the first American strategic defeat on a global scale in the context of massive deindustrialization in the United States and difficult reindustrialization. And that is correct. As I wrote again more than 10 years ago, United States, its incompetent elites, the nincompoops basically, bunch of the criminals from the mainstream media, average American journal from legacy media is a war criminal and has to be prosecuted as the people who supported genocide all across the board and war crimes. Remember? Officially now we know that almost 2 million of the Ukrainian soldiers are dead. And when you look at this, yeah, it's a global. That's why we have this unprecedented historical moment. It's a tipping point in the, between half and full millennium history of humankind, and the West is over. And this strategic defeat not only reflects on the United States, which doesn't know what to do. They don't have power. They don't have anything really, except for the blackmailing all the people around the world with the whatever, the financial and tariffs and financial blackmailing and tariffs and things of this nature. So what is to be done in this case? Russians, especially Vladimir Putin, they manage this defeat. They understand that United States have to be given the way out. It will reemerge if it reemerges, if it's not unleashed, it doesn't unleash some kind of the idiotic war, which will, Russia is the only country which can wipe the United States off the map. By the way, still having a chance to survive, albeit it will be horrendous situation. But the problem is, how do you deal with that? You have the president who doesn't understand the first thing about the real statesmanship and how you have to operate in the new geopolitical reality. Some people in Pentagon, they do, maybe some people in CIA, but they mean nothing. They cannot change basically the whole outlook of the situation. And that's why the only thing which is left is some kind of the provocation. You have those incompetent amateurs of the neocons. They don't know what war is, neither do Europeans, and there is a lot of rhetoric which obviously unnerves people, and there will be false flags, make no mistake, but the reality on the ground and is elsewhere in Ukraine is such that it's over. And the only reason they sell this BS about Russians are not moving anywhere, Russians are moving to the West. Russians do not want to govern this crap hole which Ukraine has become. And after Russians are done, finished deleting essentially all the Soviet communist heritage there, like power plant, industrial facilities in Ukraine. Ukraine has to be actually corralled. It has to be fenced around with the watchtowers, along the perimeter. And Europeans have to pay for the restoration of this society into agricultural society, which will sustain itself, and that will be it. If they don't want to do it, well, who knows? I mean, maybe they will not be able to afford it. Well, we know that they cannot afford it. And speaking about it, back to United Kingdom, for example, which still thinks that they had strategies. They don't. Not a single British general or admiral has any clue about any strategy, or let alone operational art. They don't teach those things realistically. They can go to King's College and listen to this BS by those professors who tell them the fairy tales about the role of the United Kingdom in the 21st century, but it is all crap. Those people do not understand what the fundamental thing remains in the issues of war and applied geopolitics, correlation of forces and means. They don't know. That is why they don't have strategy. And domestically, let me show you the competences of those people. And again, this is in terms of United Kingdom, but you can go and look across the whole basically Western Europe, and you will see similar situations developing in Germany, in France, but in this case it's from Financial Times. UK steel industry warns of biggest crisis due to new EU tariffs. European Commission set to propose a levy of 50 on steel imports. Well, there you go. They will continue to go at the for the jugular of each other, and Europeans will be reduced to what they used to be. The bunch of the countries nowadays smaller, not really significant militarily or economically, but EU is disintegrating. In fact is it has no life left in it. It's gonna go bust, it's already bust actually. But this is what is happening, and I want to really talk about this from the point of view of Mr. Medvedev. And Mr. Medvedev, former president of Russia, as you remember, and deputy chair of Mr. Putin being the chair of Russia Security Council. And he talks about France. Record. France's government lasted 14 hours because France has no president, just Kiev's brilliant advocate, Germany and Britain's body, Africa's chatty arbiter. But Macron doesn't care about France. He doesn't. Even our Cossacks horses entering Paris in 1814 would do his job better. And this is what Emmanuel Todd writes, and this is the global defeat of the combined West, headed by the United States. And they cannot face now this situation because they're cowards, they do not have the capability, they don't have the forces and means to start with. And again, go back yesterday to Daniel Davis and my chat about this. I mean, they cannot conduct real war. And fact is, they do not even know what real war is. And if they start doing some really stupid things, I mean, Brussels, Paris, London, Berlin, fixed targets, and they cannot hide anywhere there, including the military political top. And so this is what has happened. And Russians have to manage this defeat because essentially we have the patient who is violently mad but doesn't have anything, just its own, whatever the situation with people who are violently mad. Psychiatrists know better than me what kind of the chemicals are being pumped in their brain that they begin to swing their hands and convulsing, all kinds of the bizarre movements when you have the guards standing there with the AK-74s waiting for either the convulsions to pass or to shoot. And simple as that. This is the state of the West today. And this is what I wanted to tell you today, guys. And as always, those who like what I do, please subscribe to my channel, and those who can afford, please support me on the Patreon or buy me a coffee too. That will help me stay in this business. Well, have a nice rest of the week, and I'll talk to you later, guys. Bye bye.